Hello, and welcome to the KaiNexus Continuous Improvement Podcast. If you were with us in the last episode, you may have heard myself, Chris Burnham, interviewing with Mark Graban about my story about why I joined KaiNexus and what I do at the company. And at the end, I asked Mark Graban, wearing the podcaster's host hat. He recently wrote a blog post about being at KaiNexus for 10 years. So as he celebrates his 10-year anniversary, I thought it would be a good time to reflect on with Mark on why he joined KaiNexus and what his role at KaiNexus is now. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And as we talked about last time, welcome to the KaiNexus team. You're now a KaiNexian, even though we've known you and you've known us for a while. And yeah, so it's good. I mean, I'll reflect, I'll think about the 10 years. Do you want me to tell the story of going back to how I first joined?
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll go back to, this would have been January 2011. It's hard to believe that's 10 years ago, but to make sure I don't say 2001. No, 10 years ago was 2011. I got an email from an ER doc who I had met at a conference, having worked in healthcare for a while at that point. And he said, there's this other ER doc I know. He's in Austin. Greg Jacobson. He's working on this software. I think you two should meet. And, at first, I mean, like a lot of people, I was a little skeptical about well, what do you mean continuous improvement software? How he's written a journal article about Kaizen and, well, he really does mean like Masaki Imai style, everybody, everywhere, everyday improvement. So that was encouraging. Because if it was Kaizen event software, I probably wouldn't have really reached out. No offense to Kaizen events, but I believe strongly you need all these different types of approaches to improvement. And Greg originally then, and KaiNexus was very focused on daily continuous improvement. The product has expanded to do and help manage all kinds of improvement, thanks to our customers and their input over time. But the initial concept, the minimum viable product, if you will, was around daily continuous improvement. So come February, my wife and I were coming down from the Dallas area to Austin to go to a Willie Nelson concert at Austin City Limits, which is one of the most Austin-y things you can do. And that the day after that concert, which I think was a Sunday night, my wife had to leave because of some work travel, and then I was going to be just driving home from Austin. So I talked to Greg and I'm like, okay, well, I'll stay over an extra day and I'll come in and chat with you and we'll meet up. And it was Valentine's Day, 2011, which just helps, it was Valentine's Day. It helps make it easy to remember. And, what I thought was, at least initially, we'll meet up and I don't know if I'll like the guy and I don't know if I'll agree with the software approach. I think we ended up talking for 3 hours. We had a lot of common shared perspectives, and he was opening my eyes around the use cases of, Greg started KaiNexus to solve a problem he was facing as an ER doc, and his teams were facing at Vanderbilt. So I knew he was coming at this from a really good perspective, and that started the ball rolling. And I started talking to Matt Palulis, who is the other co-founder, chief operating officer, and he's been in a chief technology officer role. I kind of met the two of them, and at this point, it was really just them and a contract developer, and trying to figure out how could I support the cause, how could I get involved. And so then, by the time it took a while to figure out details, and I was still working for the Lean Enterprise Institute half time, and so that decision point coming in the June 2011 was to leave the Lean Enterprise Institute, to continue consulting and speaking and doing things I was doing on my own, but then to work, call it roughly half-time with KaiNexus. Startups, a lot of times, you're in an easier position to offer equity as opposed to cash. And so for the first couple of years, I was working for equity, and my role and what I've done, and we can maybe dig into this. I'll stop giving such a speech about it, but I don't know, any follow-up questions about sort of how did I get to meet Greg, and why did I join on with the team?
I think just knowing both of you and my experiences with both of you, when you say we had a common shared interest, I see and appreciate that now.
Mhm.
I'm a little concerned about a Valentine's Day date, especially both of you being very happily married. But
Yeah, we're
that's the
still
life
yeah.
of improvement work. Like we don't want you to be
We're
married to
married to
continuous
our work.
improvement.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be married to continuous improvement. We just want you to be engaged. But I think uh, it's interesting, but that same draw for me of my father went to Vanderbilt for undergrad and for medical school, and listening to him talk about his experiences with continuous improvement, not really calling it that, but solving problems as a doctor. It allowed a bond for Greg and I, like a common vernacular. And so I think if my dad were here, my dad would be able to share as well stories like this. But you also talked about Masaki MI. And for those of you that know Greg, he has that book on his bookshelf. Like literally he'll reach right there and like an original hardbound copy, which is very expensive these days if you try to buy one on Amazon. But uh, that concept of not just continuous improvement, like Kaizen software. It was a different kind of problem he was trying to solve, and that brought you into that. Can you kind of expand on that, like what those conversations were like? Did he give you examples or, uh, I guess, frustrating pain points that he felt like you could help him solve?
I think at that point, part of the challenge was trying to help get some exposure for KaiNexus in different ways. I had worked for a software company previously. This was going back to 2001, but there I was more like employee number 20. And there was already more structure in place at that previous company. But coming on to join KaiNexus, there were some challenges that I was able to help with in some ways. I mean, neither Greg or I really had much software sales experience. I had worked basically as a software sales engineer who did custom demos and worked with the salespeople. So I mean, I had been around it, and I guess I'd absorbed a lot. But we were doing things like I was trying to help give exposure to the company through my podcast, through my blog. Joe Schwartz and I were working on our book Healthcare Kaizen at the time, and the timing worked out well to include some examples and to cite Greg's journal article that he wrote with other people at Vanderbilt, to give some exposure to that, to talk a little bit about the challenges with doing Kaizen in a very paper-based way. So I was able to help make some introductions, because even then, 2011, this has changed a lot over a decade. There was a lot of skepticism about technology. I was not the only one reacting that way, but I was open to at least talk about it. There were some who were like, no software in lean. Like it's kind of an old school mindset. Where look, there are honest challenges and use cases, especially. So originally our audience, our target was healthcare organizations, multi-site organizations. How does somebody at the hospital across town see your paper bulletin board? Like, I don't think it's controversial to say there's a role for electronic visibility and electronic collaboration and sharing so trying to just help articulate the case for KaiNexus to people and try to help convince them, okay, no, you having some spreadsheets on a shared drive is not software. You trying to build something in SharePoint, that's not software, and that's going to be way more expensive than KaiNexus. So we were trying to get a foothold in the market, trying to get exposure, doing some sales, coming to market with the first paying customers, and then trying to figure out how to onboard customers and how to keep customers happy. And Matt got more help on the development side, And, those first couple of years were really, just getting the plane off the ground, if you will, to the point where we could bring in other people who had more experience. So like Greg and I had a lot of, passion for this, but you get to a point where you want to bring in someone like a Jeff Roussel to be a VP of sales. You want to bring in Adam Hamed as a principal architect. We had enough revenue now where we could start expanding the team. I cringe when people say fake it till you make it, because faking it sounds like that sounds dishonest, but having to learn through experience and try to figure out software sales and product development processes that Greg and Matt were collaborating on. It was a really exciting time to try to just really help get the ball rolling from, I think, a really solid foundation in terms of having a problem to solve, Matt and Greg being a great co-founder pairing. Those are some thoughts, I guess, on the first couple of years.